So let's do a lighting breakdown. This is going to be a super detailed lighting breakdown of Jack Bridgland style. So if you want to learn some of the lighting techniques that he uses, then this video is for you. I've tried and tested this as a virtual simulation. It really does work. I'll do a second video that's a little bit more about grading and capture settings and things like that you might need to kind of work with this. But this is about the lighting principle. But before we jump into the virtual simulation, I just want to talk a little bit about technique and the idea of light layering, because that's really important here. So we're going to deal with layers of light in a very specific way. So we're going to have a front light, which is a key light. We're going to have some bounce lights from the front also, which are fill lights. We're going to have some rim lighting, and then we're going to have some background lighting. It's just a really simple way to understand his lighting style. So even if you've only got like 3 or 4 lights that you could play with, you could still get something that's a little similar in style and technique to what he's using. He makes really beautiful work. And whenever you're watching a video like this, it should just be like a starting point for your inspiration. The thing that really makes his pictures really come together is his art direction, the styling, the makeup, who he wants to photograph, and just all of that kind of choreography that makes such a beautiful shoot. But if you can understand the lighting principles, you'll be one step closer to achieving a greater control in the studio. Okay, so what have we got in a virtual environment? We've got a big studio space here, but I flagged it on both sides with some black drape, black curtain. It's important because I don't want light just spilling around everywhere. I use quite a lot of polyboards in this setup, also again just to control the light. It does just helpful to understand the idea of layering light so that we're not letting light bleed through into different areas. We've got our subject, and then we're shooting on between f11 and f16. But this is our final setup that we've got all the lights, and we're just going to do a breakdown of this. So the main thing from the front, we've got this big Octa. It's a 150, so it's a really large light source, so it kind of fills area, it wraps around the face. I've got a grid on this, so it's really controllable as well. I'm not spilling light everywhere. And then I've also got a warming gel. So on this setup, because there's a lot of color in it, I'm playing like cool colors against warm colors. So what we've got with just that Octa at the front, you can see that it's very underexposed, baseline for the exposure, and then we can begin to layer additional light into that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a softbox in here, large strip softbox with a diffusion panel on here, and then I've got a pink gel on. I picked pink with this just because it works with the coloring of everything else that's going on with the image. Let's just compare those two. So this is the Octa, and this is the Octa with the front side softbox. You can see it's making a nice reflection in the glasses, but once we begin to layer light, you can see that that becomes something that's interesting within the picture. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put some bounce lights in from the front. These are just small light sources with grids on them, and we're just bouncing them into the front. Bounce up, they're a fill light. Some gels on here, so I have some kind of blue on this one. I've also got a blue on here, and then I've got a warming gel on that side. So let's compare. This is just the Octa and the side softbox, and then this is the bounce light from the front. And you can see that we're adding shaping kind of light here. We've got a nice strong highlight that's coming here. It's pushing up from the ground as well, so it's adding kind of texture and detail, and the same on this side. And then let's just take the Octa out so we can see what that looks like. So this is just the bounce lights, and then the softbox that's coming from the side with the Octa, and then without the Octa. So now you can really see what that Octa is doing. Although it looked really underexposed at the beginning, it is actually adding a lot of light towards the face. It's adding light in the hair. It's just evening things out quite nicely. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to look at the rim lighting. So we're going to take all of these lights out so it's not confusing, and we're just going to add the rim light. So let's look at it from the top. I think that's really helpful to see. So we've got 1, 2, 3 lights that are all softboxes, and then I've got a grid coming from the back. Let's just look at the strip softboxes first. So if we turn this to the solo light, it's a really strong light that's coming from that side. It's a shaping light. And then the same with this. Let's put this top light as just a solo light. Again, it's just hitting nicely on the hairline. It's falling off into the shoulders a little bit, and we know that our front light is going to even things out. We could have more or less from that. We could angle it towards the back a little bit more, so it is actually just kind of doing a halo effect, or we could have it so it's kind of falling forward with the light as I have it here. And let's put the other side light as a solo light. We're just making a nice clip light through here. I've got a cooling gel on this. Got this backlight up here. Let's put that as a solo. And just kind of punching in with that light. This is not like super high. If I wanted more definition of that highlight, I could just bring that up in power. Got 7.8 on here, and I've got a warming gel. And again, with the power, it's full power pretty much, and full power. So I'm adding as much highlight as I can as a rim light. And this is just a rim light, so no front light at all. So let's just compare where we've got. So this was just the bounce front light. Then we got this rim light. These flags here, I'm just stopping the light spilling forward. Then let's look at the background light. Two really big octas. Zoom out a little bit so we can see them. I've got like a pink or red, something on this, and then I've got a less strong pink on the other side. A gradiated feeling across the backdrop. So I'm going from a lighter, more washed out color on one side to a deeper color on the other side. So without the rim light, without the front light, we just got this really strong silhouette. And you could play around with whether you're shooting onto a colorama, onto a white studio wall, or onto a gray. And that would also affect how much gel you want to put into the background. And let's look at the rim light and the background light. You can see we've got our rim lights in here, including this one that's pushing in, and then we've got our background lights. Just the background and rim light and background. When you're layering light, you get a sense of like what kind of images might work and how you can play around with the lighting, is getting the idea that one area can be more dominant than the other in the picture. Okay, and then let's look at it with everything back on. We've gone in stages here. Now we've got the front lights back on, we've got the rim lights back on, and we've got the background lights. And let's compare those two images. This is the final version, and then this is the rim and the background. So we've got something that's kind of working. And you can see with all those gels, actually the gels are balancing out quite nicely. It doesn't look really orange from one side or really blue from the other side. It doesn't look super pink on the background either, because we're washing some of that color out with the front light. And then I've also got an image which is with no flags on. So we can see from the setup here, I've taken out all of the polyboards. Can actually achieve this without the polyboards in space, but if you look at this without them in, it's kind of hard to see the light in layers. So I think those polyboards really add something just to kind of understand how the image is. You might get a lot of stray light bouncing around, bouncing off the floor, bouncing off the walls. So those flags and polys are really helpful for controlling the light. Just compare the two now. So the image on the right is with no flags at all in the space, and then the image on the left has all the polyboards, all the flags, and there's not a huge amount of difference, but you can see there's a little tonal difference between the background here. We're controlling a little bit more how much light hits the background. More differences, like it's a little darker here than it is on this one because we're stopping some of that light flooding forward and hitting the background. So I think it's useful to have those polyboards, but if you don't have all of those things available, you'll still get some good images with this idea of layering the light. And let's see how we can kind of keep a fairly similar setup with this, and let's just do some full length shots. So I've got some like black flag, black cloth, black drape over the top here and top here. So I'm not letting so much light bounce around in terms of the studio space. I've also got a different flag here, which is stopping some of that clip light that's coming from the front. And some of the arrangements of lights is a little different, but the principle is still the same. So it's got the Octa here, which is a little bit further away. It's a little different of the angle. And then I've put that strip softbox coming from the front a little bit and see what that's doing. So this at the top is the strip softbox, and it's also putting this highlight on the nose here. And then the Octa is kind of filling in the rest of the image. Just put that strip softbox on a solo light, and you can see what it's doing there, right? It's a stronger light. I've put it as a cool blue again, so we can see that definition between the two lights. Take it off that. Let's see just what the Octa is doing on its own. And the Octa again, it's underexposed. I put a warming gel again, so we're playing like the warm and the cool against each other, so it's really easy to see what's happening in this example. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our bounce lights. So we've just got two bounce lights from this side. I've got a cooling gel on this side, it's at full power. And then I've got a warming gel on this side, again, it's at full power. It's a cooler light here, it's a warmer light here. So let's just look at that front light, all those front lights together now. Octa and strip, bounce light, and then all with the front lights together. So those bounce lights from the floor, they allow a lot of movement. The Octa is pretty large, so that allows a lot of movement as well. So it's not about really static poses. So then I've got two examples, front lights with the flags and then the front lights without the flags. And let's front lights with all the flags in and front lights without the flag. The main thing with this is obviously light is hitting the background more. And also there's a little bit more light that's falling on the side of the body. So with those flags, we're able to control where that light is spilling. So the next thing is, let's look at our rim lights. Strip softboxes that I'm bouncing off the floor, but they're also hitting the subject as well. So let's put this as a solo light. You can see it's really quite strong light. There's no gel on this one, but it's at full power. It's clipping the body. I could put it a little bit more behind if I want more of a rim light, or I can put it from the side so it just is kind of punching in. And then if I put this grid as the top light, I put a cooling gel on here. Again, it's sitting on top of that softbox area. So I've got strong definition on that one side. And this is a really tight grid. So I've got a number one grid on here so the light isn't spilling too much. You can see it's a really tight zone that's happening here. And let's compare it to this one, which has a number three grid. Let's put that as a solo light. And you can see the number 3, it's spreading the light a little bit more. It's filling into the space. So this rim light is going to spill around, and then this rim light is a lot more controllable. So this strip softbox I've kept off at the minute, and I'm just putting all of my rim lighting from that side with this grid light. So you can see here, it's adding definition and it's cooler on this side, but I'm not hitting it all the way across the body. And this rim light is a much larger light source, so it's spilling all the way down the body, so it's shaping a little bit more. And the other thing with this is like, you don't need to worry too much about the angles if you're bouncing off the floor, but you're also putting light directly into the body. So let's just put this back as a solo light. Okay, the light is very direct and it's hitting the body, but then it also bouncing off the floor, which is why this is a softer kind of almost of a fill light feel to it. So again, you can have movement from the subject. It's not really defining exactly where they stand. And let's look at the backlights here. So again, this is exactly the same approach, right? I've got 2 Octas. They're both angled somewhat into the floor. I've got a blue gel on this one and a blue gel on this one. They're pretty much at full power, and I'm just bouncing them into the floor. And you can see with here, it's a little closer on this side, so I get more light on here, and I get a nice gradient across the back. Right, so let's put those front lights back on. Now this is our front lights with the bounce light, the Octa, the strip softbox, but without our rim light at all. And then if we add the rim light, so we've got everything back into place. So let's look at those in stages again. And you can really see the progression. So the final image here, front lights, up lights, all of those lights together. And then we've got the rim lights that are coming through here. And then we've got the background lighting. And then we're just pushing it all into this final image. If you like this video, it would really help me out if you do comment, or you subscribe, or you like, or all of that would really help with me making more of these videos. Feel free to comment if there's a photographer that you would like me to look at, and we could begin to dig into that photographer's lighting style also.